So the national championship matchup is set. We've got Michigan against Washington. I'm here with industry insider Ben Fawkes. Ben, what have we seen in terms of betting action on sides and total since the opening of Michigan -3.5 and the total around 54.5?
So we saw some respected money immediately come in on Michigan to push this line to Michigan -4.5. It did hit 5 at a couple books very shortly, but really is pinging and ponging back and forth between Michigan -4.5 and -4. And that's where we've seen it pretty much settle right now. Majority of the bets on Washington, though, the public is backing them, and especially backing them on the money line at several books, both nationwide and in Las Vegas. Some futures liability as well on Washington to win the national championship. A couple bookmakers I spoke to thought this was Washington fans potentially getting in that futures bet. Remember, the Pac-12 title game against Oregon was in Las Vegas, so getting a couple futures bets in town before they left. So they'll probably be rooting here for Michigan to win the game.
Now, there was, of course, controversy with the CFP semifinal matchups with both Florida State and Georgia feeling that they should have gotten in. What's the feeling with odds makers? Are these indeed the two best teams in the country?
So odds makers are always slower to react a little bit in terms of their power ratings. They're not going to overreact to one game or potentially even two games. And I think with Georgia, they are still the top rated team in most odds makers' power ratings. I talked to 5 different odds makers. 4 of them would have Georgia favored over Michigan on a neutral field if they were to meet in the college football national championship game. Of course, they can't meet right now. And 1 had it at Pick'em. So again, Georgia seen still as a slightly better team. Not really anything to do with the fact that they blew out a Florida State team missing, 24 or more starters and scholarship players due to opt-outs, NFL draft, and all that. Really just over the course of the season and the fact that, again, Georgia, 2-time national defending champion, they'd won all of their games except for a close loss against Alabama in the SEC title game. But this is the way that the system works with a 4-team playoff. It's always better to lose early than to lose late, and we won't see Georgia, obviously, in the playoff or the title game this year.
Let's talk a little NFL Week 18 here, and I want to mention a couple of games, starting with Miami against Buffalo. Buffalo could win the AFC East, or it could miss the playoffs altogether. Bills, 3-point road faves in this one. What has the action been like for this game?
So I would first say, just remember, Week 18 in the NFL is a little bit like the NFL preseason. You really have to factor in motivation and whether or not a team can make the playoffs. There's so much at stake here, as well as is a team playing for a coach? Has a team given up on a coach? All of these different things. For Buffalo and Miami, I'm not sure we've ever seen a situation like this where the Bills have, I believe, the 3rd best Super Bowl odds of any team. And if they lose, they could miss the playoffs potentially entirely. So the public has been backing the Bills here, about 60% of the bets or so at sportsbooks on the Bills, -3 against the Dolphins. Dolphins do have a couple injuries as well. And the Dolphins, remember, are already in the playoffs. It's just whether they are wild card or win the AFC East, whereas the Bills have to win. Also, the Bills potentially could get in the playoffs without needing to win this game, as this is the Sunday night finale. So I would recommend live betting this game for sure. There's so many different factors that go into it, but right now the public pregame has been on the Bills so far.
Houston and Indy in basically a playoff game with the Texans as small road faves here. D'Amico Ryans, CJ Stroud have been a fairly incredible story this season, as nobody expected Houston to even be in this position. Is America backing the Texans to punch their ticket to the playoffs?
They are. About 70% of the bets at a couple sports books I spoke with on the Texans. We have seen a flip of favorites. This opened as the Colts, a short favorite, -1 or so, and has flipped to Texans -1, even -1.5 at a couple books. I think, again, the Texans, like you said, underdog story, big underdogs to make the postseason. Again, potentially a chance to win the division as well. And CJ Stroud, when he's been in there, has been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. They have covered a lot of numbers because, again, earlier in the season, they were underdogs a lot. So, and their defense is very good. So it's kind of a, do you like Gardner Minshew? Do you like CJ Stroud? for the most part, Stroud has played better and that Texans have a solid defense. So even though they're on the road, public is backing the Texans right now to win that game.
A couple of NFC teams have that win and you're in scenario as well this weekend. Let's talk about the Bucs, 4.5-point faves at Carolina in Week 18. Surely the public is lining up to back Tampa Bay here.
Indeed, this is going to be probably the most bet game, I would imagine, one of a couple with the Lions potentially over the Vikings as well. But we've seen upwards of 80% of bets on the Bucs to cover here. The Panthers haven't covered a lot of games over the course of the season. The last couple weeks, they have been a little more competitive, but they were certainly not inspiring last week, although neither were the Bucs in a game, a 23-13 loss to the Saints that really wasn't as close as the final score would indicate. These teams played earlier in this season, and it was 21-18 in Tampa Bay, with Tampa Bay winning. So it really just kind of depends, again, with motivation. Have the Panthers kind of given up on the season with nothing to play for? They can't lose to get a draft pick because that's already traded to the Bears. They've already clinched the number one pick. So how motivated are they going to be against, again, a Bucs team that needs to win this game to get into the postseason? So another situation, it might be good to see a couple drives in the game before placing a bet, but the public right now, as you would expect, is all over the Bucs.
Last one before I let you go here, a classic NFC North matchup. We got the Bears at the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love in the pack, 3-point home faves here. What are books seeing for this one?
So this is another very interesting game. The Bears are 5-1 against the number in their last 6 games. One of the better teams in all the NFL at covering the spread in the second half of the season here. So the public is actually lining up with the Bears here slightly, about 60% of bets or so on Chicago, getting that full field goal. Again, going to be a really interesting game between two NFC North teams. The Bears are already eliminated now, but kind of want to go in on a winning streak, see if Justin Fields is the guy. Do they trade the number one pick? There's a lot of things in play for them, so they are very motivated. And the Packers, same thing. A very inconsistent team, looked very good against the Vikings last week. They need to win and get in. I don't think public bettors have quite trusted necessarily Jordan Love over the course of the season. He's had highs, he's had lows. Whereas the last month or so, Justin Fields has played very well, and this Bears team has won games against both teams not that great and some pretty good competition as well.
Follow Ben on X at bfawkes22. Ben, thanks for joining me and have a great weekend.
You too.